The Iron Crossroads, it was a dusty Saturday afternoon in the heart of a small town in Texas. The kind of place where the wind carried whispers of old stories, and everyone knew everyone's name. The local bar, Rusty Spur, was the usual hangout for the weekend crowd truckers, ranchers, and the occasional traveler looking for a cold beer and a hot meal. But today, something different was brewing. A group of bikers, known as the Black Hounds, rolled into town. Their leather jackets, emblazoned with a snarling wolf's head, and loud, rumbling motorcycles, stirred a mix of excitement and anxiety among the locals. The Black Hounds were notorious, feared even in the surrounding states for their ruthlessness and chaotic antics. But as they parked their bikes outside Rusty Spur, they weren't greeted with the usual warmth. A couple of ranchers, accustomed to trouble, eyed the bikers with caution. What they didn't know was that the Black Hounds had just crossed paths with something far worse than a local sheriff or disgruntled trucker. Lieutenant Mason Reed, a battle-hardened veteran of multiple tours in Afghanistan, now living quietly under an assumed name. Mason, with his short-cropped hair and stony demeanor, was trying to leave the violence of his past behind. But it seemed trouble always found him inside the bar. The bikers immediately started causing a scene. A few of them grabbed beers, one tried to flirt with a waitress, and a couple of others began loudly discussing business in the corner. The tension in the air was thick. But when one biker, Dax, bumped into Mason, things took a different turn. "What's your problem, old man?" Dax sneered, looking Mason up and down like he was a nuisance. Mason stood up slowly, towering over Dax. His eyes were calm but sharp, the kind of calm that only came from surviving countless dangerous situations. He said nothing but fixed his gaze on Dax, who made the mistake of thinking Mason was just a regular guy to mess with. "You look like a soldier, but this isn't your battlefield, old man," Dax mocked, as the rest of the Black Hounds laughed. But Mason wasn't here to fight. He was here to enjoy his peace. But Dax, drunk on bravado and alcohol, didn't take the hint. He pushed Mason hard, trying to provoke him. That's when everything changed in a flash. Mason's training kicked in. His movements were a blur of precision as he disarmed Dax in seconds, flipping him to the ground with an effortless toss. The rest of the Black Hounds stopped laughing, realizing they were witnessing something they weren't prepared for. "What the hell did you do to him, man?" one biker shouted, but it was too late. The realization hit them all at once. They'd just tangled with a man who knew how to end things, fast. The bikers tried to surround Mason, but he was already moving, his military instincts in full gear. It was a brutal but calculated series of moves, quick strikes, pressure points, and expert disarmament. In less than 5 minutes, the entire gang was disarmed and pinned on the floor. The bartender, an old friend of Mason's, stood behind the counter with wide eyes. "Reed, you really do need to stop making a scene." Mason stepped back, his chest heaving, but his face still as calm as ever. He'd fought enough wars in distant lands. This small-town confrontation didn't even register in his mind as a challenge. But to the Black Hounds, this was a humbling moment. They'd crossed a soldier, and they had learned the hard way what it meant to pick a fight with someone who'd lived through hell. "You should have stayed in your lane," Mason said, voice low. "And you're lucky I don't make this more permanent." The bikers slowly got up, the anger in their eyes replaced by a sense of reluctant respect. They might have been tough, but they weren't invincible. The iron crossroads of the small Texas town had just shifted. And the Black Hounds would never forget the day they learned that even the quietest man could be a storm in disguise. By the end of the night, the bikers had made their exit, leaving behind their bruised egos and their motorcycles. Mason finished his drink in peace, knowing that sometimes the tables turn faster than you expect, especially when you cross the wrong person. And for the locals of the town, the story of the day the bikers met the soldier would be retold for years.